The principles, though, that are going to dictate what assets that you put in, and we're going to dig into each of these, but these ideas, right, Peter, come or mostly arise out of the nature of that exemption and the gift tax, the gift and estate tax, right? The idea being that you want to get your money out of your taxable estate. And how you can optimize that move depends a little bit on the type of asset. Essentially, what you're trying to do, in theory, is to move assets out of your estate when they're not worth very much so that you don't use up much of your exemption and then getting more value to your heirs, to your beneficiaries down the road, and also making sure that it's liquid for that they can access it. So with that in mind, let's talk about each of those individual factors.
The really big, most important factor is appreciation potential of the asset that you're thinking of gifting. And so the way that the gift and estate tax works is what matters is the value of the asset at the time of the transfer. And so if you have some type of asset that you expect to appreciate a lot, if let's say it's currently worth $200,000, but you think it's going to be worth $5 million in 10 years, if you gift it now, you can get that soon to be $5 million asset out of your estate while only using $200,000 of your gift and estate tax exemption. And versus if you transferred a $200,000 asset that wasn't going to appreciate very much in 5 years, it was worth $240,000. The trust would only have $240,000 in it instead of $5 million in it, but you would have used the same amount of gift tax exemption to get it there. So you'd rather transfer the really rapidly appreciating asset than the not very rapidly appreciating asset. Yeah. So the second factor is discountability. And so what this is so when you transfer an asset to a trust, it's considered a gift for gift tax purposes, and so you have to get that asset valued. So you have to get it appraised if it's an illiquid asset, like real estate, for example, or a private company stock. The advantage of this is you actually get discounts, valuation discounts by gifting illiquid assets. So basically, the appraiser applies a discount to these illiquid assets, and they come up with a number, and that number is usually around 30% less than what you think of as the proportionate fair market value. And so basically, what it allows you to do is it allows you to shrink the value for gift tax purposes, even though you're still transferring $200,000 of stuff, you're able to use less gift tax exemption, which means that instead of being able to transfer $14 million of stuff, you're essentially able to transfer like $20 million of stuff. And so you get more wealth into the trust while using the same amount of exemption that you would have otherwise. So this kind of pairs with the first one, which is appreciation potential. And yeah, when I was talking about that, I was saying you want assets that are going to appreciate a lot. The flip side is that you don't want assets that are going to completely tank or have a good chance of being worth nothing. At least if you're using a lot of exemption to get them into your trust. And so let's say you have a meme coin and it's worth $1 million, and you think it might go up to $10 million, but also there's a pretty good chance it's going to be worth nothing in a year. That's probably not a great asset to put into a dynasty trust. Yeah, so this is another big one. So there's a couple of big income tax considerations that you have to think about when you're setting up an irrevocable trust. It's going to be outside of your estate. And so the big consideration is something called a basis step up. So when you die, your assets, the assets that you own personally, get what's called a basis step up, which basically means any capital gain, any accrued capital gains are wiped out for capital gains purposes. So if you have a really appreciated investment property and you die, that appreciation for capital gains tax purposes disappears, and your children or spouse or whoever it is inherits the property with a basis equal to the fair market value. And so the ability to wipe out all of that accrued capital gain liability is very valuable. I might say, you know what? I have a lot of cash and bonds and stuff in my name that have high basis, and that investment property has a really low basis. And so I'm going to swap out that investment property so that it's back into my name instead of the trust. That way, it'll get a basis step up when I die. And in exchange, the trust is going to get cash and bonds and other stuff with higher basis. And so it's a way of having your cake and eating it too. So you're able to get the growth from the investment property out of your estate for that however many years, but you're also eventually able to get that basis step up when you die. This one's pretty straightforward. If you're living off an asset's cash flow, you might want to think twice before gifting that asset to a trust, just because you can't retain an income interest in the asset once you've gifted it. And so you need to have some kind of plan for how you're going to replace the cash flow that you're gifting. Ideally, you'd have more cash flow than you needed. And so you'd be able to gift cash flowing assets without any negative repercussions. But the last thing you want to do is gift an asset to a trust and then have sort of a liquidity crunch. And so in that case, you might be better off gifting assets that don't generate cash flow instead, even if it's otherwise a little bit less efficient. Transferability. This is very straightforward. There's a few things that you just can't transfer. So retirement accounts can't be transferred during your lifetime. Obviously, you can name a beneficiary on your death, but you can't transfer your 401k to your kids today, assuming you survive the rest of the day, because there's just federal law, you can't do it. Unvested options can't be transferred. Sometimes partnership agreements say that this interest can't be transferred, and so you have to check the partnership agreement or any other sort of corporate documents to see if there's any restrictions like that. Another thing to watch out for with real estate is that sometimes transferring real estate causes property tax reassessments. That's the case a lot of times in California, depending on the trust. You can inadvertently trigger a property tax reassessment by transferring real estate to a trust. Florida has a similar issue. It's just special things to think about when you're gifting to a GRAT rather than a dynasty trust. And for those who don't know, a GRAT is the type of trust that pays you an annuity each year. The annuity is usually set up so that it's equal to the amount you put in plus some amount of interest. And the interest is based on an IRS interest rate that's set every month. But the basic idea is that if you generate returns that exceed the annuity amounts that you're being paid by the trust, whatever's left over at the end of the term, it's usually a 2-year term, can pass to your children, whoever your beneficiaries are, usually your children, free of gift tax. And so it's a way of transferring assets out of your estate without even using any gift tax exemption. With GRATs, the calculus for what you want to gift is a little bit different. You generally want to gift assets that are highly volatile, and the reason is there's no downside because you're not using any gift tax exemption. There's no downside in putting a meme coin into a GRAT only for the meme coin to be worth nothing. If it's worth nothing, you just haven't accomplished anything, but you're no worse off than you would have been otherwise. But if that meme coin ends up quintupling in value, then you've transferred a ton of value out of your name into the trust.